this time. All right. Okay. So welcome everybody. My name is Jenny McFarland. I'm on staff at the Tucson Audubon Society, and this is an online Zoom meeting for the Elegant Trogon surveys of that are coming up this weekend of the Patagonia Mountains and the Santa Rita Mountains. So both these surveys happen in the same weekend, so we're doing a joint meeting for both. And some of you are actually signed up for both. So that's going to be, I think, pretty fun. But we are going to cover both ranges. So if one doesn't apply to you, I'm sorry about that, but it shouldn't take too much time to talk about that. So these are really pivotal surveys for the Important Bird Areas program for Arizona. Can everyone hear me okay?
Yes.
Yeah, the audio is great.
Okay,
Everything's
audio's
working.
great. Thank you. I appreciate that. Now let's see here. Okay, so just for a moment, I am going to mute you guys, and then we're going to be doing let's see here. We're going to be doing everyone will have a chance to ask questions at the end. So we'll go as long as we need to answer everyone's questions. But let's see here. Okay, so these are very important surveys for the Arizona Important Bird Areas program. It's one of our sort of flagship surveys of the spring that we do every year. It's quite a long-running survey in the sense that these surveys began, decades ago with Rick Taylor, who lives in the Chiricahuas, who, has retired but used to run Borderland tours and wrote the book, Birds of Southeast Arizona, wrote a book that's out of print now about elegant trogons that we'll talk about. Spent a lot of time chasing down trogons and trying to learn about their natural history in the Chiricahuas, like in the 70s and the 80s. And he started doing surveys in the Chiricahua Mountains and in the Huachucas quite a long time ago. Now, starting in 2003, is that right? No, 2013, excuse me. Starting in 2013, I joined forces with Rick and we expanded these surveys. So now it covers 5 mountain ranges. But because it was a hybrid of both a very long-running survey as well as some new survey areas, there is some sort of, uniqueness of protocol that has sort of merging the old with the new. So some of the, especially this is going to be apparent in this meeting in Madera Canyon, some of the methods that we'll talk about are because survey has been collected from decades ago that we have to try to make mesh with that old data. So let's see here. So I'm going to share my screen. Okay, screen 1, share. All right. So we are doing what I've done with a lot of our surveys starting last year, not knowing we'd have all these challenges coming up into this year especially, is taking a lot of information onto the website. So the website that where everything's going to live in terms of what we need is the Arizona Important Bird Areas Program website, and the website address is aziba.org. So from the home page here, I have a little thing about the Trogon surveys, and I have a little notification that the surveys are happening in May. So we decided to go ahead with some safety protocols in place and some changes, carry out these surveys. We have done one survey already for the Trogons, and that was the Atascosa Mountains. It's always the first one we do since it's the lowest elevation. And we're using these new protocols, and it went really very well. Okay. So what you're going to do to find the Trogon information is go to this menu at the top, and it's the Resources tab. And that takes you to this page where you can then see some different resources we have for some of the different surveys we do throughout the year. So information about the longspurs in the winter and some of our other projects that we do. But you're going to go to the Trogons one, which I have towards the top, and that takes you to this page, which has sort of just some background information about elegant trogons and why we do these surveys. Trogons are a popular bird, so I get a lot of interest in these surveys from people who've never done anything with us before. So often this can be an introduction for people coming into Tucson Audubon or Arizona IBA or bird surveys in general. So I have a lot of background information because of that. I know this attracts a lot of new people. So I have a link to sign up for the survey, which you guys have obviously used. I've added some information too that you guys might not be familiar, might not have seen before. At the bottom of the page, I have the results from past years. Each year has its own page. But I also added a video this year, and this was based on some really good feedback I got from a participant that I should do more to explain what these surveys are all about and how they work and what they entail, because we get so many sort of beginning birders or brand new people wanting to help with these surveys. So this video is down here now, and it just talks about the fact you're walking through canyons and looking for trogons. And I have a note here about the fact it's an all-day thing. So that's new information. But a lot of this up here is going to look very familiar because I've had this up here for a few years. So the first thing I have here is a link to a PDF of a scan from Rick Taylor's book that's now out of print. And it's really good. It's a nice little chapter, and it's good background reading if you're interested in trogon behavior. And it's just a whole chapter talking about sort of the different calls that trogons make and how you can interpret those calls in terms of their behavior. So it's really interesting. So if you want to read that, you can access it here. You just click, call info for Elegant Trogons, Rick Taylor's book scan. And then I have some audio files. Now these are going to be pretty similar to what's on your birding apps, but I got these from Zeno Canto, and they specifically correlate with the 3 calls that Rick talks about in that chapter on call info. And they're really quite helpful to have listened to these calls ahead of time and know the 3 different calls and understand sort of what that can tell you about those calls. So let's swerve a little bit and talk about trogons. So the next link I have is identification tips on how to find, and tips on how to find elegant trogons and other information from Cornell. And if you click on that link, that takes you to this page, which is a really nicely done page about trogons. And it's got some nice photos. It's got a male, a female. It's got a couple of videos. Because to me, one of the biggest giveaways with trogons is the way they move. They fly very quietly. For such a large bird, you would think that they would make a lot of noise flapping around their wings, and they don't. It's actually quite soundless as they move, and they're surprisingly sneaky for a bird so large and brightly colored. So it talks about that a little bit and how they can sit very quietly. They'll sit sort of in the mid-story or, kind of behind a screen of vegetation where you can sort of see part of them, and they'll sit very, very still. And it's very effective when you're looking for them. It's very effective at hiding themselves. So it's got some of that information. It's got some keys to identifying them and their shapes and all that. And I like this photo in particular, showing one sitting in a pine tree, because we think of trogons as being in sycamores. And just like my t-shirt shows them in a sycamore, and that is the sort of the classic image of elegant trogons in Southeast Arizona. But the Patagonia Mountains, which we'll be surveying on Saturday, is actually the number of trogons we find in the Patagonias is every year we've done it has been equal to the Santa Ritas, if not a little bit higher. So, and there's hardly any sycamores in the Patagonias. There are some along Harshaw Road where we find a lot of trogons, but we find them in other canyons in the Patagonias without any sycamores at all, where they're hanging out more in oaks. Now, when we do the Huachucas the last weekend in May, we have some routes that are completely up in the pines, and we have trogons up there too. So they're a little more open-minded than just being in sycamore drainages. We find them in other areas too. So I like that photo because it shows one in a pine. But it's got some nice videos and some information about habitat and sort of other species you find. So if you need background on elegant trogons, this is an excellent page, and it is linked to on our hub here. I sort of refer to this as the Trogon hub page. This is the page that has information about the entire 5 surveys that we do. Now I have, for the first time, since we're not being able to do in-person meetings, we've had to get a little innovative. So I've created a separate page for each of the 5 surveys. So let's talk about Patagonia Mountains first. So I have here, Patagonia Mountains with the date of the survey, and then click here for more info. And this is going to take us to a separate page specifically for the Patagonias. And this is where we're going to get, rather than email people the protocol and all that stuff every year, I've put everything here so we can access it and download what we need. So I have here the protocol and instructions that can be downloaded. It's a PDF, the data form, which can be downloaded, and then the list of routes. We're going to talk about that in a moment, because how this works, the list of routes, is it's going to take us to a Google Word document that I can edit, but everyone else who has the link, just by clicking on that link, can view. So you can look at this, you can cut and paste, you can copy from it, but you can't alter it. So go ahead and look at this and don't worry about messing anything up because you're not able to alter it. So this is where I'm going to be after our meeting, because I wanted to let people have input in what route they wanted. I'm going to continue to add names and add some more direction information, because normally we would do an in-person meeting and I sort of point at a map and wave my hands a lot and try to describe where someone's going. But because we can't do in-person meetings, what I did for the survey last year was add a lot more directions to the equivalent of this document. So I'll be doing that today and tomorrow, adding a lot more information for some of these routes, especially if you're doing a route that's not your regular route. Okay, so then here is where I will add this video once we're done. The recording will be put on YouTube and I'll have it right here. And then I also have these interactive map of where you can see the different routes that are in the description page and see them actually in a map. So you can also view this as a separate entity. So if you click that view larger map option, you can see it as a full standalone thing with a key on the left. So I have a lot of information for each of these sections. And then let's look at the Santa Rita's one, which is going to look remarkably similar. Elegant Trogon survey of the Santa Rita's. I have here the same thing. I have the protocol and instructions that can be downloaded. And I also have a data form to be downloaded, but I have two data forms. And this is where it comes in with the fact that some of these areas have been done for decades, some of them have not. The Patagonians was never done in the past. So the protocol for that one is what I was able to design the protocol for that one. And that is just sort of you're assigned a canyon or a route, and you spend the morning traveling through that canyon or route looking for trogons, documenting where you find them. Because Madera Canyon was done in the 80s, many years in a row, we have some of the older protocols that Rick developed that are still mostly in place, as well as some new areas that are using the more modern protocol. So I have two data forms to reflect that. So this is the stationary survey data form, and the protocol talks at length about the difference between the two. So this is a stationary survey. And so routes that are in Madera Canyon, you're given an area that's your territory, but you want to spend a good part of the morning hanging out at what we call the midpoint, which is the center of that territory, and documenting whether you're hearing trogons up canyon from your position or down canyon from your position. Okay, so that's going to be most of the areas in Madera Canyon, or what we call stationary surveys. And then we have our hiking survey data form, which is for areas like if you're doing Gardner Canyon or Cave Canyon, or these areas that are larger and sort of weren't done in the past. So you're going to spend the morning moving through an area documenting trogons. Then I have here again the list of routes, which I will be sort of adding information to. Now this looks different from last year already because I've been trying to make it more clear what's going on. So I have a little description again here, Madera Canyon routes. These all use the stationary protocol where you stay at the midpoint from 6 or as close to 6 as you can until 9, and then move through your route. So I have the name of each route, the boundaries of the route. So that's sort of your area, and no other surveyor should be in your, in your territory during the survey. Or if they have to, sometimes people have to move through your territory to get to their territory, and that's obviously fine, but they shouldn't really be claiming your trogons within your territory. So each of these have the boundaries of your route, and then a midpoint, and then there's the link here to the map that corresponds to these routes, and they're all labeled the same way. Now what gets a little confusing for people, and I'm trying to make this more clear, is some of the naming of routes in Madera Canyon especially are using sort of the older protocols for naming, because these routes started in the 80s, some of them have strange names. So Lower Hopkins is a territory that Rick has called it Lower Hopkins for years and years and years, but it's actually what most people would think of now as Lower Carrie Nation. It's the Carrie Nation Trail. Now it's Hopkins, it's a canyon that leads up to Mount Hopkins, but it's Carrie Nation Trail. So I'm trying to use both names to make that more clear to everybody, as well as a description, and then the midpoint. Now I do have some routes that are what we call our canyon transects, and those are Cave Creek Canyon, Gardner, Temporal Gulch, which is on the Patagonia, the town of Patagonia side of the Santa Rita's, and Josephine Canyon, which is already going to be done by Sue Carnahan. So, and she does that route as a regular route. So this is where all the information will be in terms of who's doing what survey and what route. If you, and I'll be adding more directions to many of these areas, more information over the next 2 days. If it's not enough, if you still I add some information, but you want more information, please ask me. Don't worry about bothering me. I do want to know if you want more information for sure. Okay, so let's see here. Zoom thing's being weird. Okay. So another thing I wanted to talk about was the protocols themselves. This is a challenging year. We're recording this video in 2020, right in the middle of the coronavirus pandemic. And because of all these additional challenges that come with that, I have some people that have expressed concern that they won't be able to be on their route by 6 a.m. And that is fine. Just do it as early as you can. I have someone coming down from Phoenix who thinks they can be on their route by 7. That is great. I appreciate you guys' help. I appreciate you guys, coming out and persevering in these difficult times to help with this survey. So don't worry about causing a problem by doing the best you can and not being there exactly at 6 o'clock. That is totally fine. The Trogons make a lot of noise until it starts warming up. So as long as everyone is sort of where they need to be, everyone should just try to get there before 7 or at 7-ish. I think we'll be fine. So doing the best you can is certainly gonna make me extremely happy. So I appreciate all your help with doing this. So the one other thing I wanted to cover, I'm backtracking a little bit here, I apologize for that, but the calls. So the surveyor resources thing, part of the reason calls are so relevant for Trogon surveys is they are hard to see. They're good at staying put and staying silent. Not staying silent, sitting very still. So calls can be very, very important for Elegant Trogons. And I learned from the last Zoom meeting I did that when I click on these links of audio, it doesn't actually play for you guys, but use these links on your own to listen to Trogons before the survey. But if I click on them here, I can hear it, but you guys can't hear it. So I have to, my workaround is to play these on my app. So the first call, which is what I'm gonna play, is very similar, is what we call the coink call. So this is what you can think of almost as singing for a Trogon. Trogons are not passerines, so they don't sing in the traditional sense, but it's like, this is like singing. This is just a territorial call of almost always a male. So that is the most commonly heard sound that Trogons make. If you hear it and it sounds like that people describe as like the barking of a little dog or like a frog type sound, like brah, brah, brah. If you hear it and it sounds like it's in that tonal range, it's a male. Females do this call. I have heard them do it, but their voice pitch is much, much lower. It's like a baritone. It's a full octave below the male call. So when the females do it, it's much, much lower in pitch. And they also do it for much fewer phrases. I've heard them coink doing the much lower, much, much lower, maybe 3 or 4 times, and then they stop. So they don't call nearly as frequently, they don't call nearly as long, and it's a much lower pitch. So the other major call you want to really listen for is what we call the cow call, K-O-W, and this is what it sounds like. So that is, again, almost always a male. I have heard females do it, but again, on a much lower pitch. And it's not as loud. It's a much quieter call. If you're hearing that call, you're probably a lot closer to the Trogon than you think. And it's a much more husky, sort of running together kind of call. All the notes are running together. So it sounds pretty different from the barking coink call. So this is the cow call, and it's a much more sort of, I hate to anthropomorphize the birds, but it's like, it feels, whenever I see them doing this, it seems like they're being much more intensely emotional about it. It's a call that almost always, when I track down a Trogon giving that call, they almost always have a mate. So it's usually either a call he's doing to her, to his female, or I have seen males both do this while they're facing off. So it's like it has an intensity to it for them. So if you hear that cow call, there's something going on there. That is not just a lone male that's just advertising the fact he has a territory. This is either he's talking to his female or facing off with another male. So if you hear that cow call, something's going on. It's either a pair or maybe two males fighting, or something that definitely should be investigated. The last call is what we call the wiki call, and it is an alarm call. So that's a call that in Rick's chapter, he calls it an alarm call, and I have heard them do that as an alarm call, but when they do it as an alarm call, it's actually much more intense than that. It sounds far more, piercing. It's a very intense call, and that is a Trogon that is very alarmed, and especially this time of year, if we hear this call, you might be near a nest, an active nest, you might be near some fledged young, or the Trogon is very, very alarmed. So if you hear that, and the protocol talks about this at length, you want to back away from that sound and observe at a distance, because we don't want to stress these birds out as much as possible. Now, the form that I just played that's in the app is, I think, them doing that call, but it doesn't sound nearly as scared, the bird. It's much more, the same call, but not as intense. And I hear them do that in the winter. So I think they do that call in the winter time if we find one of the few wintering Trogons in southern Arizona during the winter. So it can be both an alarm call and maybe some sort of contact call. I'm not exactly sure. Trogons are a little bit mysterious. And the last thing I wanted to cover before I open this up to everybody is the fact that the reason we do these surveys in late May, and sometimes into the very early June, depending on how the dates work out, is this is the time of year when Trogons are making a lot of noise. They're calling a lot. These birds are here all summer, but they make a lot of noise right now, and they're also less likely to be actually nesting yet. So these birds are probably, it's not so early that they're not on territory yet, which can give you confusing data. It's late enough in the season that they're probably mostly on territory, or maybe still fighting about the boundaries of their territories between each other, but they're mostly spaced out where they're gonna be, and they're calling a lot, and they are responding to calls. And that's extremely relevant, because one of the strategies that the protocol talks about is to play calls, to try to get Trogons to respond back to you, because that can be a very effective way to find out if there's Trogons present. In the Patagonia Mountains, we can do this anywhere we'd like and as often as we'd like, and that is up to the discretion of you as the surveyor. You can do it as often as you're comfortable, or if you're not comfortable doing it at all, you don't have to do it at all. So if you're in an area, you're like, wow, this looks like really good habitat, I wonder, there should be a Trogon here, you can go ahead and play to see if there is a Trogon. Because if you play that coin call or the cow call, you'll probably, if there's a male hanging around, he'll probably respond and by calling back, which can give you really good data. If you thought you heard something, God, was that a Trogon? I'm not sure. Go ahead and play to see if it responds, to confirm what you thought you heard. So those are the two situations where I tend to play. Now for the Santa Rita's survey on Sunday, we need to be very aware that there are playback restrictions. The Coronado National Forest does not allow the playing of calls in Madera Canyon of birds, and this is because this area is so intensely birded. There's a lot of people in there all the time that they don't want these birds being worn out, aggravated, or overly disturbed by the playing of calls. So we can't do it in Madera, but if you're in another part of the Santa Ritas, you can. If you're doing, Gardner Canyon or an area that's not in Madera, you can, but we can't really do it in Madera Canyon. Okay, so just know that is a Forest Service rule. Okay, so I also want to briefly talk about these two areas spatially. I know we have a few people that have not done the Patagonia Mountains that are going to be joining us, and the Patagonia Mountains are an interesting area. They're really very good. I like the Patagonias. We spent a lot of time in here doing a lot of bird surveys, but they're not really birded all that much. So a lot of birders don't really know the area that well. And this is coupled with the fact that the area is not really laid out for recreation. They haven't really put up a lot of signs on where things are. So it can be a bit confusing if you haven't been in here before. So normally how we do the Patagonias is we all meet in the morning in the town of Patagonia. Now some people know where they're going, some of the locals or people who are very familiar with the area know where they're going, and they just take off in the morning, and that's fine. Just go straight to their route. That's totally fine. But for those who would rather caravan in and then sort of be confirmed that they're on the right starting point, we always just sort of do that for anybody who wants to. We caravan in. We usually meet at gathering grounds in Patagonia, in the town of Patagonia, and then head in. This is more difficult this year because of these social distancing restrictions. So what I've thought through this a lot on what we could do. I think we're still going to have the caravan option be possible, but we can't really be carpooling unless you're carpooling with someone who's in your household. But we can't have people who aren't in the same household jumping into each other's cars. So if I do pair people up, you guys will have to drive separately and then social distance yourselves in the field, which we did successfully in the Atascosas last weekend. People that worked well for the few teams that we did that with. But I am gonna make the caravan option still an option. So I will be outside gathering grounds at 5:30, so we can start heading down down Harshaw Road, because it can be a little confusing if you haven't been here before. But the Patagonias, once you've seen it, once you've done it, I think everyone will be a lot more confident in this area. Because when you look at this map that I've made here online, and you can access this yourself and zoom in as much as you'd like, these little yellow lines in here that are labeled with little 4-digit numbers are Forest Service roads. And that really is the best way to navigate yourself through the Patagonias, is knowing what some of these 4-digit codes represent, because the turnoffs have those little brown Forest Service signs with the 4-digit codes, the 4-digit names on there. Now, it looks like there's a lot of roads in the Patagonias and that you might get lost. However, once you've seen it, it's actually pretty straightforward, because there's only one major road that looks like a major road going through most of the Patagonias, and that's Harshaw Road, or for some people sometimes it's called Harshaw Creek Road. It depends on sort of where on the Google map you're looking. But the main road that comes out of the town of Patagonia and then heads towards the Patagonia Mountains and then goes through the Patagonias is very obviously the main road when you see it in person. Now, there is some divergence, like some of the routes, like Corral Canyon, which Olio will be doing, goes off of the road wise, but that's very well signed. So that's the road towards San Rafael Valley, how you access Corral Canyon or Willow Canyon. But most of the routes are off of, either on or split off from Harshaw Road. So Harshaw Road, if you've ever been to the Patagonias, is that main road that goes by the ghost town of Harshaw, and then the very prominent cemetery, which is used to be a very well-known birding spot. You keep going, and then you have some of these turnoffs. So this one right here, for instance, is the Upper Humboldt turnoff. So this is the 4702 turnoff, one of the routes. So what you basically do is you come down Harshaw Avenue, Harshaw Road, go past the ghost town of Harshaw, and then there's routes that come off of. Now, these are labeled as Forest Service roads, but a lot of them are so old and so worn that they're more like really wide roadside trails now. So what I recommend everybody do is sort of just park on the side of Harshaw Road, go walk up, do your route, and this is a good one. There's usually Trogans up here. Go walk up here, do your route. Then when you're done, come back down, get in your car, literally turn around on Harshaw Road and just take it all the way back to Patagonia. So you can do it as a loop, but I recommend everyone just sort of turn around and go back. So this is why we do the caravan method, because it's not like this junction is very well signed. Now, we have GPS points, and if you're watching the little brown Forest Service signs, you know that that's the right one, but it can still be difficult to find. So for those who want it, we're going to caravan in, and we'll sort of leave people along their route. So we'll stop when we get to this first turnoff and be like, oh, okay, this car who's doing this route, this is your start point, you're going up that road. And then the caravan moves on. So we are going to still have that option, but we need to be very careful to social distance. So I have these pretty well labeled. Now, Harshaw Road itself is very good for Trogans. So this main road, there's a section, and I have it split into two routes. The main road has sections that have a lot of Trogans. So if you do your route and you don't get a Trogan and you want to see one, you certainly can potentially on the way out stop at a good-looking sycamore patch. This is a major creek going through the Patagonias, and look for a Trogan. So I have some various routes in here, and some of them require some pretty level hiking. Some of them are a little bit more intense hiking. I do have a route called Finley and Adams that works really well with a 2-car system, where one, you sort of leave a car at the bottom, drive up to the top, walk down the canyon, and then drive up to retrieve the car. So if anybody is interested in that route, let me know. But yeah, let me know your preferences for sure. If you have a specific route in mind, let me know either in the chat window, or you can email me later today. Or if you just have a general preference, like I'd prefer a route with lots of hiking, or a long route, or I want an easy to walk route, let me know, and I'll do my best to accommodate you. So that's the Patagonias. A lot of trogons in here. This is an underwatched range for sure. This is a really underbirded area that's really very good for lots of birds, but I think surprisingly for many people, for elegant trogons as well. So let me pull up the Santa Rita's map. Now the Santa Rita's has its own challenges. Oh, that's not what I wanted. It has its own challenges of people know Madera Canyon very well. Generally, a lot of people know Madera Canyon very well, but when we talk about up and down in Madera Canyon, it can get really confusing for people. Me too, I did this for years, where it looks, because Madera Canyon runs the road, when you're driving in, you're heading south, but you're going uphill. So that really messes with a lot of people in terms of what is going on, where they think it's, so when we say up canyon, we are talking about elevation. Okay, so up canyon is uphill, and down canyon is downhill, even though going up in Madera Canyon is heading south. So most of the routes are in Madera Canyon, and some of them are on pavement, so are quite easy to walk, but a lot of them are trails. So I have some that are going up the Super Trail, I have some that are going up the Kent Springs Trail, I have Bog Springs Trail, where we have had trogons the last few years. So nearly all these routes have certainly a chance at trogons, and many of these routes will have trogons. Now again, if you missed it and you don't get a trogon on your route, I've been hearing a lot of reports from the Santa Rita Lodge, so I'd maybe stop by that area with social distancing on the way out and look for a trogon. I have some areas that are not in Madera Canyon, and these are the hiking routes that are specifically, you don't have to stay at the midpoint. There's no midpoint or anything. You just have a whole canyon that you travel through. Some of them are already claimed, but several of them are up for grabs. So Cave Creek is one that's up for grabs. This is a really cool area. You access it via Gardner Canyon Road. Gardner Canyon is up for grabs. And then maybe Temporal Gulch too. I have a regular person who does that route. I'll see if they want to do it, but the road's a little rough on that one. But these two both are very well, really well maintained roads to get into really nice canyons where you can hike and look for trogons. So if you're interested more in that kind of route, just let me know. And then the last thing I want to cover is this new method of data entry. So in the past, and in a normal year, we would always have a meeting point, usually in Madera Canyon, so that's where most of the routes are, have a meeting point where people bring by their data forms. Now that works for getting me the data, but also it gives me sort of I can check on a list all those routes as they come in and know that those people got out of their route safely and they're on their way home. So I definitely keep safety in mind very intensely as our #1 priority. And I want to say that right here is that safety is our #1 priority. If it's getting too hot, if something isn't right, bail on the survey. If your safety is my absolute #1 priority, I want everyone to be safe. I want everyone to have a good survey and then getting good data, and that they go in that order, my priorities. We can always go back and do a route later in the week if something happens. I don't want anyone risking their safety at all for data. Absolutely not. So that's another thing I want to point out. But we can't do a meeting location to drop off data this year because of these social distancing restrictions. So what I've developed, and it worked quite well, is our online data form. So it's a survey. It's literally a Google survey that I created where you don't have to do it the day of the survey, although I would suggest doing it pretty soon after the survey so you don't forget any details. But you're going to enter your information about the survey, what route you did, who you are, I have some additional questions, you know, how long did you walk? And that's just the only reason I'm asking how long of a route you did is so that we can start to standardize our data, because this Trogon data, we're going to start using it pretty intensely to try to track population trends, and all this information I'm asking for helps with that. I have questions about how long you drove. That's just for our volunteer hours and effort tracking. And then if you kept an eBird checklist, you don't have to, but if you did, this is where you can share that. You can also, the back of the data form that you download has a checklist, and if you just mark what species you had with guesstimates of numbers, you can just share that as well, even if it's just a photo of your list, that's totally fine. But if you do eBird, this is where you can share that. Now, if you say at the bottom here that you didn't have any Trogons, the survey ends and you're done. If you say you did have Trogons, though, it takes you to another page where it asks you for specific information about the Trogons. So we tried this for the Atascosa survey. I got really good feedback. People thought this was good. I had done some test runs, had some people do some mock data entry in this, and we've made some tweaks. So I think this is really quite good. But if you have feedback after doing it, please let me know. So we'll be doing online data entry. And then the other really important thing for everyone to keep in mind is to let me know through either text message or call me when you are done with your survey. I have a list of everybody, and I'll be marking everyone off as they tell me that they're safe, and I won't leave the area until I know that everyone's safe. If you're planning on making a day of your route, let me know that, and then I won't worry so much about you, or you know, just check in with me when you're done and safely heading out back to your car. So we're doing some extra stuff, some contortions to try to make sure we keep everyone safe, as well as pull off this survey. So it's I appreciate all of you guys helping me with that. So let's see here. I have here some questions. Oh, great. I have some volunteers to do areas. That's great. And then, very good, Olia. That's a very good question. I always forget to mention that. Is this a fee area? Yes. So Madera Canyon is a fee area for Coronado. Many people have a Coronado pass, which works great. If you have that, that golden pass, that gets you in no problem. If you don't have any of those things, there is a $5 recreation fee. Is it still $5? Does anybody know? Let me unmute everybody. Unmute. I'm muting you all. So if you have a pass, you should be good. But if not, if you end up paying $5 to go there, let me know and I can reimburse you. Why is it not unmuting?
It's $8 now.
It's $8? I thought maybe they raised it.
Yeah, they jumped it to 8, and they are enforcing it. Yeah, I've been hearing that they have indeed been doing that. How do I unmute some of you guys? I unmuted.
Now you're muted again?
No.
Yeah, I'm trying to unmute you guys. I'm having trouble with some of you. Okay, if you're still muted, go ahead and unmute yourself. Does anybody have any questions?
Yeah, I got a couple of them.
Yeah.
How's the truck traffic? The truck traffic was awful for a while along Harshaw.
Yeah, Harshaw is going to be a challenge this year. Now, coming in that early might also be a bit of a challenge. Now, it is a Saturday, so that might help. But the survey is on a Saturday in the Patagonians. What Dick's referring to is the fact that there's been some uptick in mining operations in the Patagonia mountains. There's been a new mine going in and a lot of truck activity. So we're going to have to just do the best we can with that. Now, Robin Baxter is going to be doing the route that's closest to the mine, and he's a local. He knows that area quite well. So we've moved the start of his route further in than it used to be because of the mining activity. So this shouldn't affect any of the routes that much, but we need to be very careful as we're driving in and out on Harshaw Road, because sometimes those mining trucks the bends pretty fast. But I don't know exactly what's been happening in the past few months because I haven't been in there that recently. But yeah, we should all be aware if you're in the Patagonia, there are mining issues. Okay, do you have another question, Dick?
I forgot. I know I had another one.
All right, well, if it occurs to you, speak up. But any other questions from anybody?
Well, just both these areas are
this is not a central stop for an hour on either one of these, right?
For you mean the protocol of the survey itself?
Yeah, the protocol, right? The
Yeah,
basic protocol.
All of the routes in the Patagonias are sort of spending the morning traveling through your route. You don't have to stay anywhere. Now you can, if you think you're in a good area of activity, you can sit and stay and listen, but it's just moving through your area at a pretty, you know, at a pace that's not too fast. You don't want to miss the birds. But if you're in some of the Madera Canyon areas, those are sit and stay areas where you want to sort of get to your midpoint, hang out for several hours, and then move on to your territory. Protocol, I think we've refined the written protocol over the years, and I think it lays that out pretty well. But if you have any questions, please let me know. Either call me, I've been spreading this everywhere, so call me on my cell or just email me, and I'll do my best to address anyone's concerns on that. But yeah, the Madera Canyon runs, because they've been done that way for decades, that is the protocol we're sticking with. Any other questions?
Question for you, Jenny.
Yes, Jane.
When I was up there a couple weekends ago, like, no cell phone reception, so I won't have an exact location. Is that okay on the transects? Do we just say we think we're, you know, a quarter mile in or something on it?
That's a really good question. I appreciate you asking that. Yeah, so the question was about, if there's no cell phone reception, how do I get GPS coordinates for my sightings, right? So this is a good two-pronged question. So if you're using a GPS unit, you have a GPS unit, this is a good time to break out your GPS unit. If you those work whether you're in cell service or not. Now, many people don't have GPS units. So these newer smartphones, if you download one of the free GPS or like hiking apps, they actually work pretty accurately to give you a coordinate even when you're not in cell phone service. So a lot of pretty much all of the newer smartphones use satellites very intensely, and I've tested them against taking my smartphone out into where there's absolutely no cell phone service and compared it to what a handheld Garmin unit comes up with in terms of a coordinate, and they're remarkably close. So you can use, there's lots of free GPS apps. You can try one of those to get a coordinate, and they work pretty well even when there's no cell service. Or another really good way, if you don't have one of those apps, another good way to get a coordinate is to just start a new eBird list on your app on your phone. If you just start a list, it actually will register the coordinates for you. So that's another good way to do it. It's a workaround that many people have used. If none of those work for you, or you don't have a smartphone, just your estimation of how far from your start point the bird was or near some sort of landmark will get us pretty close. So the best you can do, coordinates are best, but if you can't come up with a coordinate, if you're having challenges with that, just sort of your best description of where the bird is will work too. Or, you know, marking it on a Google map later, or like, it was right after that big switchback in the trail about, you know, half a mile from my start point. That will suffice if that's the best you can do. But coordinates are preferable. And another really good point that I want to mention about cell service is the Patagonians have spotty cell service, and the Madera Canyon has little to no cell service. So that's why I'm asking people to text message me when they are out. So that can be when you're back in Madera Canyon, if that's when you get cell service. But when you have cell service and it's safe to, like, you know, pull over and send me a text message. Send me a text message just saying you're safe. And another good reason to do text messages is I won't be able to receive any messages until I'm far enough out of the canyon. So if I'm coming out after you and you send me a text, then I'll get all the text messages at once, and we'll know that you guys are safe. Whereas if you call me, I might miss that call. Okay. So that's a really good question. Thank you. So I'm gonna go ahead and unmute everybody now. Any other questions? I'm having trouble unmuting some of you guys. I don't know why. If you're muted, go ahead. Any other questions? Okay.
Well, I appreciate you guys' help with this survey. This video will be available on the website, on both the Patagonia's page and the Santa Rita Mountains page for the survey. And if you have any questions, go ahead and give me a call, especially on my cell phone, or send me an email. But call, either text me or calling me is the most quickly. So if you have any follow-up questions, go ahead and give me a call.
Video.
Any other?
She has his cell phone on the video.
Is your phone number on the site? I'm
Yeah,
not
it
sure I
is on
got
the
your
site. It's on the protocol, and I'm also going to send a follow-up email to all participants that has it as well.
Great, great.
Jenny,
Yes.
when can we expect, I'm free to do whatever is needed in Madeira, so when will we get our sort of assignments for?
So I'm working on them now. I've
Okay.
assigned some people already who filled it when they signed up using that online survey to sign up for the Elegant Trogon surveys, who said they wanted a specific route. I've already assigned those for the most
Right.
part.
Right.
But I will be doing this today. So if you have a preference, I see some here in the chat window. But if you have a specific request, yes, send me an email or me today with that, and I'll be assigning those today and tomorrow. So those will be coming up on those online Google Docs that show the routes, and then I put people's names in red. If you don't like your route, let me know, and we can let me know sooner than later, and we'll do some switch around. But I've really tried to accommodate people's requests, which is why I've held off till now for the most part making assignments, because I wanted people to have a chance to make a specific request if they wanted. Great.
Yep.
Any other questions? You're muted, Mark.
Do that when I'm hungry.
All right. Great. Well, thank you so much, guys. I really appreciate you guys coming out for the Zoom meeting.
Thanks, Jenny.
Thank you so much, and thanks for helping with the survey.
Thank you, Jenny.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah, thanks, Jenny.
Thank you, Jenny.
Bye, guys. It's going to be a good survey. It's going to be fun.